the first of the neutral cards, and a doozy is Arcane Tyrant. A 5-cost 4/4 that costs 0 if you've played a spell that costs 5 or more this turn. And this card is super strong. It's effectively a 0-cost 4/4 if you're playing a deck that is profitably casting these 5-cost spells. You can certainly use it in kind of a crazy meme deck with the Deck of Wonders and whatnot, but this is just a powerful card in a deck that's casting, Nourish, in a deck that's casting Blizzard, a deck that's casting Cabalist's Tome, a deck that's casting a lot of these, just otherwise normal powerful cards, and it can just provide you with a really, really strong tempo swing that is, very effective at winning games. 0-cost minions, cheap minions, undercosted minions are one of the most powerful things that exists in Hearthstone, and I can very easily imagine just a big spell deck that plays this and Arcane Giant is just looking to accelerate out a bunch of stuff while removing your opponent's minions. It's kind of like an Inkmaster Solia, right? Because Inkmaster Solia, most of the time, you're just playing alongside a spell that costs about what Inkmaster Solia costs. So you're getting essentially a free 5/5 along with your Firelance Portal, your Flame Strike. This is the same thing, except you don't have to be a Kazakus deck. You just get to play this alongside whatever your spell that you cast is that costs at least 5 mana. So I think this card is super, super strong and would be a great inclusion in a lot of different decks. Next up we have Boisterous Bard, 3-cost 3/2 Battlecry, give your other minions +1 health. Meh. This feels like a arena card to me. I don't really see +1 health on a body like this being nearly impactful enough for Constructed. Doesn't really have any particularly crazy meme applications either. This card, on the other hand, has a lot of applications. I love Carnivorous Cube. This is one of the cards that I'm most excited about in the entire set, and this card can be very powerful in a lot of different decks. All kinds of things you can do with it, whether it's just sort of naturally, Carnivorous Cube, eat your damaged guy, your Carnivorous Cube dies, you get value because, you summon 2 copies of it. You can use this extremely effectively in any kind of Death Rattle deck. This card is amazing with, say, Devilsaur Egg or any Death Rattle, but especially something like Devilsaur Egg. I think this may be the sort of card that drives the power of the Play Dead Hunter deck through the roof. You have a lot of tools to enable the power of your Death Rattles with Play Dead and Terrascale Stalker, and this guy plus Play Dead. You play this on a Devilsaur Egg, then you Play Dead this guy. You're just then you need a Feign Death, even though it's not in Standard, but just so much power. I guess summoning a bunch of eggs isn't necessarily powerful, but this can do so many powerful things. There's just so many different things, just playing it on curve after value trading, Death Rattling. This card is awesome and can be used in just so many different ways. I love it. Next up is Corridor Creeper. Costs 1 less whenever a minion dies while this is in your hand. It's potentially kind of an interesting card for a Hunter deck. It is a beast, but a Hunter deck that's kind of swarming with stuff. It can kind of be a Thing from Below-ish type card for a Hunter deck, right? You trade off your alley cats, you potentially unleash the hounds, trade in a bunch of hounds, and then you get a cheap beast. I don't think this card is nearly as powerful as Thing from Below. It is also just a 5/5, so it dies to Anduin and Dragonfire Potion, so it probably doesn't have a home right now. I do think this is a card that has some upside that's worth looking into. So I would not sleep on this card. It may have a home in the future. Corrosive Sludge, 5-cost Battlecry, destroy your opponent's weapon. Just in case there weren't enough ways to kill your opponent's weapons, here does another one. If you didn't want to draw cards with a Harrison, you just wanted to be dead and you wanted 1 more health, there you go. I think this is just more, because we can, and it's thematic to dungeons and anything else. I doubt this will really see play over Harrison, and I don't think people will play this much weapon removal, but I suppose we'll see. Cursed Disciple, a 4-cost 5/1. Death Rattle, summon a 5/1 Revenant. So this is, Death Rager, I guess? He rages, and then he rages again. It's tough for this card to really find a home, right? Maybe this is a card that's good in Quest Druid, because it effectively gives you 2 5-cost guys for 1 card, and can double trigger your quest with a single card for 4, which is pretty powerful if you're looking to accelerate that out. I doubt this will find sort of a natural home, but maybe a Death Rattle deck is looking for something like this. Probably not. it does feel like the best home for this is probably Jungle Giants. Next up is Dire Mole, a 1/3 beast for 1, period. This actually is potentially like a strong card if you're playing a hunter deck and you really care about keeping your beast in play. This guy is not the easiest for everyone to kill early on. If you play like Dire Mole into Houndmaster is potentially just a strong 5-mana play. Also, he's a little mole. He's like digging around. Just like a vanilla 1/3, it's not that bad. Like we've seen just how powerful a lot of the 1/3s are, even when their abilities aren't relevant. It's I think potentially like a reasonable, durable 1-drop for Hunter that can enable your beast synergy. So I think this card has potential, even though it's extremely simple. It's also great with Build a Beast. You tag this on to just about anything in Rexar, and you get a very good deal. Dragon Hatcher. We talked about this as when we revealed it on Omnistone. This card is very weird. I don't think this card is going to show up in competitive decks, but you could imagine this getting barnsed out. You could imagine, just playing this, forcing your opponent to deal with this and the dragon that you get. You can avoid the battle cry of, Deathwing, just get a 12/12 in play. You could do any number of things, but mostly you just kind of go, heh, you played a Dragon Hatcher, and then you kill your opponent because they played a Dragon Hatcher. Blizzard, please nerf! Unfair! Anyway, I actually like that this card exists. I think it's cool, it's thematic. It is, an interesting card for like a dungeon delving set. Dungeon delves and stealing the treasure from dragons. Slaying those dragons is like a very classic fantasy trope. I also think that a card like this existing, when you're giving juicy cards to decks like Dragon Priest, makes a lot of sense. Because anyone who's like, oh, I'm losing to Dragon Priest, it's like, well, here's a minion you can play and just ace your opponent's operative right away. So I think this is a sweet card, and I think that depending on the popularity of dragon-based decks, it actually could see pretty significant play. Gravelsnout Knight, 1-cost 2/3 with Battlecry, summon a random 1-cost minion for your opponent. This is a weird card. I guess your opponent's minion is likely to be worse than your 2/3, I should hope. If you Gravelsnout Knight and give your opponent a Gravelsnout Knight as well, that's very sad. You just gave them, a better deal. This in like a priest deck, maybe you play this, then you get to kill your opponent's guy and heal your guy, but I don't really see it. I think this is like often going to be a card that will have a serious drawback. Maybe use it with like MC tech, try and give your opponent an extra guy, steal their other guy. But yeah, it doesn't feel like a card that has nearly enough like upside to justify the possible downside. Ebon Dragonsmith, a 4-cost 3/4, reduce the cost of a random weapon in your hand by 2. This card is real good with the Warrior Legendary Weapon. This card is real bad with the Hunter Legendary Weapon. This card is just hilarious. If this attacks a hero, add a copy of it to your hand. You just keep making swarms of these Tribble-like things. I don't think this card is actually good, but I think this card is hilarious. And I definitely do want to try playing this with Hobgoblin Wild and just somehow get one to connect, play another one. You somehow need to give it charge. I'm not really sure how you do that. I don't think it's actually a good card, but I think it's a hilarious card. Fungal Enchanter. 3-cost 3/3, restore 2 health to all friendly characters. This is a card that could be real strong with the Northshire Cleric. If you're playing like a proactive priest deck, you get some trades in, Fungal Enchanter, draw a bunch of cards. It sure shows how bad that 4/5 that does the exact same thing is. I think this card is potentially actually pretty reasonable. It's definitely a very, very good arena card, I think. But definitely has some reasonable potential with any of the priest cards that care about healing your own guys as well. I think this card's pretty sweet. Fungalmancer, 5-cost 2/2, not so good. Battlecry, give adjacent minions +2/+2. Feels like mostly an arena card. You're getting okay stats. If you do have 2 minions, you play this, you're getting like +4/+4, which is obviously pretty reasonable. But the 2/2 body that it's attached to is pretty mediocre. So I don't think this guy's going to really see very much constructed play. Almost certainly none. Furbolg Mossbinder. Battlecry, transform a friendly minion into a 6/6 elemental. When I first saw this, I was thinking, oh, you make a friendly minion a 6/6, you attack with it right away. That's pretty powerful. Then I realized you don't get to attack with it right away, and that's sad. But this card's pretty powerful with the new Evolve card, potentially. You get a 6/6 off your totem, then just evolve this guy. I don't know how much the 6/6 elemental actually costs itself, but it might be good with actual evolve too if it's also a 5-drop or a 6-drop, because you're getting multiple bodies as long as you have anything else in play. So maybe more grist for the evolve mill to have all these cards that want to evolve now that you have even more evolve. So could be interesting. Maybe you can like kind of even move away from like the Jade element of that deck or something and do some just crazy evolve stuff all the time. Grand Archivist. At the end of your turn, cast a spell from your deck. It's an 8-cost 4/7, which is kind of garbage. One thing worth noting, based on the wording of this, I suspect that it takes the spell out of your deck because other cards would say play a copy of, whereas this just says cast a spell from your deck. So you can't just forever like Blizzard your opponent or anything like that. This is obviously a card that wants to go into the I have only big spells deck that sort of looking at making for Mage, but I still don't think this is really a card that you necessarily want in that because you want to have things like Firelance Portal. This isn't a particularly exciting card to cast like Dragon's Fury with or anything like that. Mostly this is going to hopefully fill the role of our Lord and Savior Yogg-Saron when he goes away in the upcoming rotation, and for the meantime will be a good buddy of his in the same deck. Next up we have Green Jelly. I'm colorblind, let's skip it. Also it sucks. Next up we have Guild Recruiter. 5-cost Battlecry, recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. I think this card is pretty interesting with Flamewreath Faceless, and not all that much else. The fact that you're getting a 2/4 for 5 is pretty mediocre, but if you are getting a 7/7 alongside that, I think that's pretty sweet. Overall, I doubt that this is going to be a card that really finds much of a home, but I definitely think that we will see people experimenting with this for 4-cost 7/7s, just because it's meme-worthy and pretty powerful. That and I guess you could play that with Blade Master too, and you have multiple reasonable hits. We'll see. I'm glad they finally immortalized me as a Hearthstone card. I hope no one kills me to take my coins away. I do feel like my life has meaning now. But no, I think this card is kind of cool. I like that it's thematically hey, you went to the dungeon, you killed the dragon, you took his treasure. But I don't think this card is very good. It's not that overstated for what you're getting as a 4-cost 5/6, but it's a pretty big downside. If it gets killed and your opponent gets 2 coins, that can enable them to accelerate out drastically faster than you, and certainly more of an advantage that you got by playing a somewhat overstated minion. Next up we have Hungry Ettin, a 6-cost 4/10 with Taunt, and Battlecry, summon a random 2-cost minion for your opponent. We talked about this card a bit on Omnistone, and some people were pretty high on it because they're like, oh, it's huge minion with Taunt. But I think if you imagine the average 2-cost minion is a 2/2 even, this is kind of like a Ancient of Blossoms with +1 attack that is medium at best. There's the possibility you play this at someone's Doomsayer, the possibility you play this at someone's a value minion for your opponent. The absolute best case scenario is that you effectively have built yourself an Ancient of Blossoms with +1 attack, and that's pretty mediocre, right? Maybe it has 4 attacks, so it's good against Priest, but is this even the sort of card that you want against Priest? Is just a big dopey thing that doesn't hit that hard? I don't think so. I think this card is kind of neat, but I doubt it will see much constructed play. King Togwaggle. So 8-cost 5/5. Battlecry, swap deck with your opponent, give them a ransom spell to swap back. When I first saw this, I was like, oh, cool. It shuffles a ransom spell into their deck, and they have to draw it to shuffle to, steal their deck back. No. The ransom spell is 5 mana and apparently goes directly to their hand, which feels so sad to me. You're already spending 8 mana on a 5/5, and then, your opponent can just spend 5 mana to make the cool, wacky thing that you did not actually do anything. I mean, maybe having it shuffle into your opponent's deck would be too disruptive for a lot of games, but I just wish it was a little bit harder for your opponent to take their deck back, because that's what's cool about this card, that's what's fun about this card, and it just largely being tax your opponent 5 mana on their next card feels so much less exciting and less cool to me. You could try and play it in a deck that's going to fill your opponent's hand, burn the ransom, but you have to be filling your opponent's hand and then playing an 8-cost minion, which seems pretty unlikely. I wish this were more capable of actually manifesting its meme. Next up we have Kobold Apprentice. 3 cost 2/1, Battlecry, deal 3 damage, randomly split among all enemies. Meh. I mean, this is casting an Arcane Missiles on a mediocre understated guy. I don't really see a home for this. Maybe you're playing a deck that can't deal AoE and Dude Paladin has taken over the metagame and this is your answer. Dude, just play a different deck. Next up is Kobold Monk, who is hilarious, by the way. I actually love this like art, and he's balancing with the candle on his head. 4 mana 3/6. Your hero can't be targeted by spells or hero powers. If this also somehow like could be protected or didn't just die to, you know, Fireball, it'd be cool against Quest Mage, the Quest-ish Mage decks. But I see this as probably struggling to find itself a home. It's neat. Think a 4 cost 3/6 is like actually okay stats. So if you're like worried about getting burned out by, you know, an opponent who doesn't just have infinite fireballs, I think that this is, you know, potentially like an interesting card. And I like that it's a place that you can go if you're like, okay, well, you know, my opponent's playing Freeze Mage, my opponent's playing this. It's like, I don't just want to play whatever anti-secret cards against them. It gives me some sort of option to like give myself a window where they can't just easily blow me up. So I think it's pretty cool. And I expect this to be a card that may see some tech play in the future. Next up is Lone Champion, a 2/4 for 3 Battlecry. If you control no other minions, gain Taunt and Divine Shield. I think this is a powerful card. This is a potentially like strong defensive tool for low minion controlling decks. Though I do wonder if this is like even better than Tar Creeper for a lot of those decks. Because against a lot of decks, Tar Creeper effectively has 5 health. This kind of effectively has 5 health. And Tar Creeper actually kills more things attacking into it. It doesn't feel like the cost of having not be able to have other minions is necessarily worth the, like, if it's an upgrade at all over Tar Creeper, it can obviously like attack better than Tar Creeper can, but I don't feel like it's a meaningful upgrade over Tar Creeper in a lot of situations that has the potential downside of, well, it doesn't actually even get taunt if you have another minion in play. So I'm suspect that this will actually see play over Tar Creeper in most controlling decks, even with a low minion count. Next up is Marin the Fox. This is a card that I feel like I know quite well, because I've played a lot with him since he was released right after BlizzCon. It is a dangerous card to play in a Bone Mare metagame. So many ways to get punished for giving your opponent a minion. It's certainly a sweet meme card, and there's certainly situations in which it is powerful, when you can like remove the opposing guy right away, things like that. But I really don't expect this to be a card that really sees competitive play. I've said that many times in the stream, many times in YouTube videos. I'll say it again. So Marin the Fox, sweet meme, don't think it's that great. Master Oakheart, a 9 cost 5/5 with Battlecry, recruit a 1, 2, and 3 attack minion. This is a very weird card. And it's a 9 cost card that recruits small minions. Granted, it's not 1, 2, and 3 cost minion. It's 1, 2, and 3 attack. So you can potentially like construct a deck where getting a 1, 2, and 3 attack minion into play is like some powerful combo. Like imagine if the only 2 attack minion in your deck is Radiant Elemental, and the only 3 attack minion in your deck is Lyra. That's pretty strong. Imagine if the only other 2 attack minion in your deck is Dragon Hatcher. You know, you play this, get a Dragon Hatcher, get some other thing. You know, there's a number of interesting possible combinations that this can get into play. I don't think it's at all an obviously powerful card, but I think it's a card that is dangerous to dismiss. I think that people will look at this and be like, oh, dust. But I think that this is a card that is worth keeping in mind, especially as future expansions come out, because there are a lot of powerful things this kind of effect can do, especially as the card pool increases. Next up is Plated Beetle, a 2 cost 2/3 beast with Death Rattle, gain 3 armor. This card, I think, has a lot of applications. I think that this is a card that if you're playing, you know, a control hunter deck, one of the weird ones that plays minions, playing like a mid-range controlling hunter deck, this is both a beast and a Death Rattle minion, and something that can keep you alive. So this has a lot of applications in that style of deck. This is also a potential Death Rattle minion for, say, a Quest Priest deck. Right now, there's like no really good 2-drop Death Rattles. I find myself, you know, always double 1-ing on 2. And this is a 2-drop Death Rattle minion that's totally okay statted. 2/3 for 2 is just a River Crocolisk. It's not great, but it's not horrific. And it can give you armor. It can also potentially go in a Beast Druid deck or just an Armor Gain Druid deck and have both of those synergies going on. So this is, I think, a major role player style card. I think this is not going to be the superstar of any deck, but I think this is going to be a card that plugs a lot of holes in different decks and has the potential to see a lot of play. For when you absolutely positively want to have your legendary weapon. This is a 3-cost 1/3 battlecry. Return when you destroy weapons to your hand. I think that this is a card that, if you are playing a deck that's really reliant on weapons, if you're playing a deck that really wants to ensure that you're able to get your sweet combo off, even if everyone is playing weapon removal, this is a card that you can play. But I do not think this is a card that's gonna really see play in any sort of normal decks. If there's some weird combo deck that uses weapons over and over sometime, maybe this is something that sees play. If you really, need to Blood Razor every turn and you have double Forge of Souls, or Blood Razors and Rummaging Goblins, you can just keep Blood Razoring constantly. But, I don't think this card is going to see much play. All right, Scorp-o-matic. 2-cost 1/2 mech with Battlecry. Destroy a minion with 1 or less attack. It's a weird card. I don't know why this is just a Scorp-o-matic rather than a Scorpion. That's a mech rather than a beast. I would expect a dungeon to have more normal scorpions than mech scorpions. But this is a reasonable answer to Doomsayer, I guess. It's a good answer to Acolyte of Pain, but it's pretty poor on its own. And I think it's pretty tough to justify playing a card like this in your deck. Maybe you play it with Marin the Fox to kill the chest. Kaboom. But maybe there's some mech synergy cards that allows you to play this kind of like a Curator in the future, just sort of float it in your deck. But yeah, anyway, I don't think this is a card that's likely to see a ton of play. Maybe there's a really distorted metagame where everyone has Doomsayer and you really need this. And it's better than a Crazed Alchemist, or you just want this and Crazed Alchemists. We'll see, but I doubt it. Next up is Sewer Crawler, which is a 3-cost 1/1 with Battlecry. Summon a 2/3 Giant Rat. Because everyone needs more of that 2/3 hunter who summons a boar, whose name I can't even remember. But anyway, that's bad, and this is bad too. Shimmering Courser, 4-cost 3/3 beast. Only you can target this with spells and hero powers. So this is pretty clearly a card that wants to go with buffs, in a Galvadon style deck. We saw this on the reveal stream get a million different buffs and just smash face with it. I think this card is has gotten a lot of crazy hype. I think this card is medium. As someone who's played a lot of buff Paladin, a lot of that kind of deck, playing a 4-cost 3/3 on turn 4 is not really the way that you're going to win, because you need to then have that stay alive and buff it a bunch. If we lived in a world where the most common way to kill things wasn't Vile Spine Slayer, maybe this would be better. But it is a card that will be, I think, a crucial component of Unicorn Priest, which we've heard a lot about over the years, and now it's finally viable because there's a unicorn. But in all seriousness, I do think this could be a card that ends up in Galvadon decks, in buff Paladin style decks. I don't think it's nearly as potent as a lot of people seem to be suggesting, because you still need to have this 3/3 survive to then play buffs on it. Maybe you can wait until turn 5, 6, 7, play this, and have some sort of way to otherwise protect it, adapt its stealth or something. But then why does it matter that it can't be targeted anyway? I just think that this is at best sort of a medium card in those decks that will lead to spectacular wins when you're able to pile it up and your opponent has removal spells that they can't target this with. But you're more vulnerable to getting beat up by opposing minions that kill your minions, or weapons or Vile Spine Slayers, than you are most removal spells. Next up, Shrieking Shroom, a 3-cost 1/2. At the end of your turn, summon a random 1-cost minion. Well, if you're playing a Shaman deck with Flame Tongue and Bloodlust and stuff, and your opponent can't kill this, then you're gonna really run them over. But if your opponent couldn't kill a Mana Tide Totem or anything, they're probably gonna get beat up by that thing staying in play. So yeah, I just don't see this finding a home. Back in the Shroom train, the Shroom Brewer, 4-cost 4/4, Battlecry, restore 4 health. We saw Refreshment Vendor and that was a 4-cost 3/5 that restored 4 health to both players, and that card actually saw a lot of play. There's a big difference between 4 and 5 health in terms of the stuff that kills it, but we don't actually see nearly as many of the sort of 4 threshold cards be quite the same staples as they used to be. I think this card is definitely pretty good. You know, this is a card that offers healing to anyone who wants it. I think that the deck that's most likely to play this is going to be Warlock, simply because Warlock cares the most about having access to healing. And, you know, having the 4-cost 4/4 versus the 3-cost 3/3 of Earthring Farseer can fit into your curve better sometimes, and also is just slightly more powerful. It doesn't die to Bloodrazor. There's no Death Spite, so the 4 health there isn't as big a deal. There's fewer True Silver champions, but I think this is just a card that may see some fringe play in some decks that just don't have access to good life gain that want it. Next up is Silver Vanguard, a 3/3 for 7 Death Rattle Recruit, an 8-cost minion. As I've said a number of times, I think that this is most likely to see play in decks that are looking to like cheat out stuff with either like Barnes or the Hunter Ooze that steals Death Rattle from decks. I could see this being in a deck with Katrina, Winter Wisp, the Ooze, and a bunch of gigantic beasts to give you various ways to cheat them out. I doubt those versions of those decks are likely to be the best. And when you're playing this fairly, you're basically getting a 1 mana discount on the 8-drop, which can be decent, but seems like it's a lot of work for not all that much. This is me when I haven't had my caffeine for the day. But no, this is pretty much a arena style card. As a 4/12 for 9, this could be a Malagos if you were playing it in constructed. But wait, hold on. How is this not a dragon? It's literally Sleepy Dragon and it doesn't have a dragon tag? That's got to be a mistake. I'm offended. Moving on. Sneaky Devil, a 4-cost 2/2 stealth. Your other minions have +1 attack. So this is basically a raid leader with stealth for 1 more. I don't think raid leader is good enough, even with stealth at one more. I mean, maybe you're playing a deck that is looking to really swarm down your opponent, but there's so much good AoE these days that it feels difficult that even with stealth, this is like unlikely to be all that effective. It is a neutral demon, which means that if you're playing priest and you Potion of Madness your opponent's like recruit guy, you could get this into play. I don't think this is good in like what zoo decks look like these days. Even though it is a demon, I feel like at the stage of the game, like you're generally playing like bigger things in most zoo decks these days. They like tend to be like mid-range curve decks as opposed to like swarm decks. But maybe the stealth demon can be reasonably effective with some cards that either care about demons like Blood Fury Potions. You're guaranteed to have something to buff with it, but in that case, you're probably just playing Blood Imp. I'm just not seeing it. I don't think this card is enough going for it to really see much play. Spiteful Summoner. Battlecry, reveal a spell from your deck. Summon a random minion with the same cost. It's a 6-cost 4/4. So this card is either a card that you play in like the big spell mage type decks to get like just big swing turns because you have nothing but expensive spells in your deck, and you get like a 4/4 plus like a random 5+ drop, or you play this as a minion in a deck that's all minions and only has really expensive spells. Like you play this in a deck that has like Call of the Wild and nothing else for spells. It's kind of the opposite of the I Hunt Alone deck. The I only hunt with 9-drops. And it's kind of an interesting card there, right? Like you're guaranteed, pretty much guaranteed. I guess there's a world where you draw both your Call of the Wilds before you play this, a 9-drop on turn 4, or on turn 6 rather, or turn 5 you pointed out. Potentially pretty strong. So I think this card actually has some chance to see competitive play, because in either the medium version where you're just playing relatively expensive spells, it's potentially pretty powerful, and certainly in the extreme version of playing nothing but the biggest spells, this is going to have a big swing. Next up is Stoneskin Basilisk, a 1/1 Divine Shield Poisonist for 3. It's a weird card. It's a beast. The fact that it's a beast is pretty interesting because it can be difficult for your opponent to clear. Even as a 1/1, your opponent has to have like multiple sources of damage to clear this, to stop you from like Hound Mastering it or whatever. Not that Hound Mastering on 1/1 is necessarily super exciting, but Poisonous is, you know, obviously pretty strong, and it's especially strong with Divine Shield because your opponent does like multi-attack into it. Everything that attacks into it is dead. It is a card that's also pretty hilarious in the world of Rexxar because it is just keywords. So I think you can get it as part of your second beast selection. But I doubt this is a card that's really going to see play. If you really wanted to have like a difficult to kill poisonous minion, you could always play Giant Wasp already. So it seems difficult to justify playing this instead, if that's what you're looking for. Okay, the Darkness. I think this card is really going to increase the amount of play that Magic Missile sees, as well as Mordenkainen's Faithful Watchdog. Because if you have Mordenkainen's Faithful Watchdog cast, then the Darkness can't sneak up on you, and if you have Magic Missile, then even when it's dormant, you can attack the Darkness. But in all seriousness, the Darkness is a hilarious card. You know, it's a 4-cost 20/20, which is by itself obviously just ridiculous. And if you are going to play this in your deck, you're probably going to be playing like a deck that's forcing your opponent to draw a bunch of cards so that you are able to get your 4-cost 20/20 online. But that kind of deck often wants to be like a Vanish deck, right? You know, when you're playing like a Mill Rogue style deck, you're probably going to be like trying to reset the board with Vanish. You don't Vanish this once it's while it's dormant, right? You can Vanish, you know, everything else, and this just stays in play until you actually get to that point. And then you have the sort of weird like dichotomy of like, okay, you brought it out, and now you get a 20/20. But I'm not 100% sure if it can attack right away. I assume it can since it's like been there dormant in play. But yeah, I don't think this is like a good card, but I think it's hilarious, and I definitely want to play with it just for the highlight reel of smashing my opponent with the Darkness. Next up is Toothy Chest, also known as Vindicated Box Sayer, I guess. It's basically just exactly Vindicated Doomsayer, except it's a 3 for an 0/4 instead of a 5 for an 0/7. I think the card's pretty bad. Maybe this is a card that's like reasonable against like controlling priest decks, right? Because you just get a 3-cost 4/4 unless they, you know, attack into it and kill it. Obviously, it's bad against silence. It's not like they can, you know, Potion of Madness it and kill it or anything like that. At least, kind of neat. Probably not going to see very much play though. Next up, we have Trog Gloomeater, a 5-cost 1/5 poisonous taunt. At least if your opponent Potion of Madness this and kills your biggest guy, unless it's really big, they don't both die. I mean, this is definitely an interesting card as like a defensive tool for, you know, a deck that's just looking to stay alive, because, you know, no matter how big something is that attacks into it, it's dead. And it being able to actually be a removal spell for larger things is you know, pretty relevant too. I think it's easy to dismiss this card, but I don't think it's like totally useless because it does trade up with anything and does have, you know, some difficulty for a lot of opponents to get through it. The fact that it is vulnerable to Potion of Madness, and Potion is such a powerful card and popular card in the metagame right now, is pretty rough. But, you know, maybe you play this with Hobgoblin, maybe recruit it with Master Oakheart. There's always those little bits of things that you need to pay attention to in terms of possible synergies. Overall, probably not great, but gotta keep an open mind. Next up is Violet Worm, an 8-cost 7/7 beast with Death Rattle, summon 7/1/1 grubs. I don't know if the grubs are beasts too. I don't know that that matters because it probably isn't good either way. It's kind of reminiscent of Sated Threshodon, right? Like, it's a big beast that leaves behind stuff. This obviously leaves behind more, but costs more. It is potentially pretty powerful if you manage to get a charging Scavenging Hyena off of Rexxar. And if the grubs are beasts... But yeah, this is the sort of card that just, you know, even if it were powerful, it is punished very heavily by Spreading Plague. And you end up, you know, your opponent kills your big thing and then suddenly has a ton of scarabs in play, and you didn't really make any headway. If anything, you lost it. Next up is Void Ripper, because Confuse was so good, we made it cost 1 more, put it on a 3/3 body, and give it to everyone. I mean, yeah, this card is very good if you're playing Spreading Plague, and you just want to really blow your opponent up when they have their little grub guy die and give you 7 1/5s, and then you're like, all right, I will attack you for like 4,000 damage. But yeah, I mean, this is potentially a strong card in any of those like weird mid-range, like taunt/token druid decks where you're playing Spreading Plagues, you're playing Crypt Lords. You have a lot of ways that you end up with just big health minions that are difficult for your opponent to remove. If you're able to swap a lot of them, it's very easy to kill your opponent quite quickly. So I think this card does have a decent amount of potential. And at worst case scenario, you know, it's a 3/3 body for 3. You could also get it off of a Kazakus Potion, which, you know, may sound like really sort of outlandishly irrelevant, but it is the sort of card that can come up in weird ways in games and be relevant. Next up is Wax Elemental, a 1-cost 0/2 Taunt Divine Shield. I mean, this is actually like, you know, a difficult minion for some decks to like easily get through. You're just absorbing, you know, 2 hits, potentially big hits in sort of the mid game. Probably not a card you're just gonna like, you know, put into your deck. But as an elemental, you know, maybe you discover it off of certain Calamos and it can be relevant. Maybe you're like playing hand buff, you know, maybe you're playing like a small time recruits deck and you play this, buff it up, and you have, you know, this Divine Shield taunt, like huge minion or whatever. Build yourself an Anoyotron. I don't know. Again, unlikely to really see play, but could find some corner case scenarios. Unless I missed something, our last card is Zola the Gorgon. I suppose it makes sense that the neutral card starting with Z would be our last card, but maybe there's something hiding in there that I missed. But anyway, Zola the Gorgon, 3-cost 2/2 Battlecry, choose a friendly minion, add a golden copy to your hand. First of all, I love the fact that it gives you a golden copy. I think that's hilarious and thematic. It's like, you're turning you to stone/gold or whatever, and taking you as my own. That's cool. It also potentially lets people who don't actually have golden versions of cards get to see the cool golden animations and then go, oh man, I want a golden version of a card. So clearly this is just trying to upsell all of the Hearthstone customers. Probably should have just given everyone one of these for free, so then they'd just be salivating at how cool all the gold cards are. But anyway, I think this card is actually really interesting. I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, why would you play this, yada, yada, yada. You know, you can just play Face Manipulator or whatever. But the ability to, in any class, potentially duplicate either just legendaries or battlecry effects or whatever, you know, having access to multiple copies of any individual card is potentially pretty powerful. I can imagine using this with the like double your battle cries elemental thing, and you know, getting multiple copies of things. You know, using this with, you know, like just any individual key minion in a lot of different decks could be pretty powerful. You know, it's not going to be like a, you know, universal like staple legendary in every deck, but frankly, that's a good thing. I think that, you know, it's better that you have these sort of interesting legendaries with weird quirky effects that can go into some decks rather than Dr. Booms, which just end up in every deck. I think Hearthstone is much more fun when you have, you know, puzzles like this to solve with your legendaries rather than just raw power, which we see in cards like Boom. Anyway, that is the end of my Kobolds and Catacombs review. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I am super excited for Kobolds and Catacombs to come out. Also to cards that I really want to experiment with, also the decks that I want to build. And of course the dungeon run, which I didn't even talk about through any of this, but which looked like an absolute blast on the reveal stream, and I can't wait. So anyway, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.